My husband decided to cancel my flight ticket right before I boarded the airplane. I was going to see my sister get married. It was her biggest day and I was going to be there for her. So, I was so mad I didn't even ask him or confront him. Why did you do this? I went back to my house from the airport, got into my car and made the 5-hour drive, and I made it just in time for the wedding. Well, turns out when I get back home, he was yelling at me. He was telling me how Zoe, our babysitter, decided to steal a diamond necklace from my drawer and he caught her red-handed and had to confront her alone because I would not answer the phone. Well, there's more to this story. Turns out he's actually a big fat liar and I know the truth. I'm gonna start at the beginning, so you all get a gist of how my life was then and now. I was born in a suburban city, busy with the noise and traffic of people going on about their daily lives. I was alone, enjoying all my parents' attention until my sister Emma was born. I loved that I would now have a playmate. I was skeptical about having to share my parents' attention with her, but I soon came to realize that they loved us both the same. I was devastated as well as Emma after the passing of our parents. I was 20, Emma was 18, and it was at the time of their passing. They were hospitalized for a week or so due to an injury that they had suffered after getting into an accident at work. We woke up to a call from the hospital about how my parents had died that very morning, and how sorry they were that they had tried their best to make them better. But I guess God had other plans. The weight of my parents' passing and their responsibilities now dumped on my shoulders, and it got to me and I collapsed into bad habits. I started staying out late, partying until I could no longer stand, and alcohol was incorporated into my resume. I could not live without it. It was only when I realized how my actions were hurting Emma, who had nobody to share her grief with apart from me, did I stop my antics and got myself and Emma into several therapy groups just to battle our grief. It had worked out for us. I finished my degree, started a job, and got Emma into college, all by the age of 22. In the following year, I had my last therapy session. I decided I was now in a good place and did not need therapy to help me out anymore. I also got a job offer in a city far from my hometown, so I would need to drop everything, including my place with my sister, and start a new life in a new town. The job had me working 50 hours or so a week, and I could come home too tired to process anything, and I would just fall into a deep slumber until I woke up the next morning and start the routine, all over again. I never saw myself as a wife or a mother until I met Tim. I still don't know what persuaded me to join an app that would match you to your perfect half, but I signed up and got matched with a few people. Tim was one of them. He was working at the post of junior accountant, looking at a promotion in a few months, and was ready to settle down and have children, hoping the promotion would be enough to take care of himself and his would-be family. I did not know if I had ever wanted kids, as I understood that life is not immortal, and the pain of losing our parents and having to look after one still lingered inside of me. I, however, wanted to explore a new phase in life, and so I decided to meet up with Tim and see where it would take me. Tim was something out of a fairy tale. He had a lean body with a smooth accent and would melt me every time I heard his voice. Tim would listen intently and hang on to each word of mine, and I had loved that about him and honestly did not mind having to explore new phases with him. Tim and I went on about 3 to 4 dates, and before long, I was engaged to be married. The wedding had been a moderate as, Tim did not want to spend all the money on throwing a party for everybody else. He instead told me we would be going on a vacation for the honeymoon. He booked us tickets to Switzerland and a 2-day gala trip to the snow, skiing, and the whole package. It was not long before I fell pregnant with our first child. When my husband Tim got to know of it, he was overjoyed, as was I. He took me to all appointments and held my hand through the whole process, and I was at 6 months when Tim sat me down and calmly talked me into quitting my job. This had me anxious as my job meant I would lose my financial independence and would depend on Tim for everything. I had enjoyed my freedom and did want to give it up just yet. Over the next few weeks, Tim became even more persuasive in getting me to quit my job, and when I was close to giving birth to our first kid, it had become hard for me to manage both my pregnancy and my job, and so I was forced to quit. Tim took this as an opportunity to take over the finances of the family, and he had taken over my accounts and said I would not have to worry about anything, as he would provide me with whatever I would ask of him. He also started giving me a few $100s as a monthly allowance just to spend on myself apart from groceries. This suited me fine in the beginning, until I became pregnant with our second and third kid. I pushed him to ask his boss about the promotion, as taking care of a family of 5 would require him to do so. Tim complied after a while, and he was given a promotion. By 28, I was a stay-at-home mother with 3 kids while my husband worked full-time just to take care of us all. For the first initial few years, I had a tough time managing my kids and maintaining a social life. Tim managed all our social meetings, and we only went to ones he would accept, denying the requests from my friends and my side of the family, coming up with excuses that we were hours away and we could not leave our kids with a babysitter as they were simply too young. The pressure of taking care of my kids in the house got to me, and I realized my kids were old enough to be left in the care of a babysitter. So, I started the tremendous process of selecting and hiring one, as not everybody could be trusted with one's child. It had been weeks, and I was tirelessly conducting interviews as well as managing my kids when I stumbled upon Zoe. Zoe had just started out as a babysitter and did not have much experience with it, but was more eager to learn the ropes. She loved kids, and since she did not have ones of her own, she had signed up to look after other kids in turn, helping out tired moms. On her first day, I taught Zoe a few chores to be done around the house, and I would manage the rest and head out for the day while she looked after the children. That night, when I discussed it with Tim, he had blown up on me for hiring Zoe without his input, and he told me he was working full-time so I could stay at home and look after the kids, and that it was my job and not Zoe's. I had retaliated, saying I did not have a break for a long time, nor met my friend and family, and by hiring Zoe, I could do so. Tim had given me the silent treatment after that, which had worked out for me as I could go out and meet friends. When I first arrived in this new town, I did not know anyone and had a hard time making new friends until I met Nellie. Nellie was a barista at a coffee shop that I frequented, and I had switched from alcohol to caffeine, which helped manage stuff. Nellie and I became good friends, and I had someone whose shoulders I could cry on. I still missed my little sister, as she had been my best friend, but she had started out her new job and our timing differed with our shifts. After my marriage to Tim, I had not visited Nellie nor my sister, who lived hours away, anymore. I'd barely had the time to do so, but now with Zoe as my babysitter, I could meet all my friends and my sister. I started hanging out with Nellie more often like I used to and paid a visit to my sister every once in a while. She had a new boyfriend from work, and I was happy my sister was starting to get settled into her life. Zoe, too, had become a good friend and often kept me company as I did chores around the house. Tim did not like that I was living a life of friends and entertainment and using his hard-earned money on a babysitter when it could be used for something more important, and so he started working from home more often, as if to keep an eye on the spins and me. I, however, did not stop my social visits, and Tim was left alone at home with the kids and Zoe, looking after them. I did not mind, as I trusted Zoe. One day, I returned home from hanging out with Nellie to my kids crying, and the house was an absolute mess. Tim came out of our bedroom looking rather taut and angry, and he told me he had fired Zoe as he caught her red-handed committing a robbery. He'd gone to the bedroom to collect something when he found Zoe rummaging around in my cupboard and saw as she pocketed a diamond necklace that he had gotten me. In a fit of rage, he snatched the necklace from her and fired her on the spot. asking her to get out and never show her face here again. Well, I was so shocked and saddened to hear all this, as though I'd been a good babysitter and friend. However, it was my husband's words over her, and so I was back to taking care of my kids by myself again. My husband had taunted me for a while, saying how babysitters cannot be trusted and how I had done a lousy job at conducting a check before hiring Zoe. I had no other way but to listen and follow his words, and soon started to believe it was indeed my fault for possibly endangering my kids. I'm now 30, my sister's 28, and my kids are aged 2, 4, and 7. I no longer had to look after them 24/7 as I used to when they were full babies, and I still had to take care of the house and everyone's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My sister got engaged to her boyfriend, and her wedding was set to take place in our hometown. It's hours away from where I lived, but I did not have an issue with it, seeing as we could take a short flight to it. However, the distance became an issue for my husband. When we first got the invite, Tim was quick to say no and said he was not going and would stay for the kids, as should I. My sister did not want kids at her wedding, just a party with adults. So it was child-free. This gave my husband an excuse, and he said that since the wedding does not allow children, we would not be going, and he was not eager on hiring a babysitter after the last one we had. Zoe robbed us. We went back and forth on this, and I insisted on going as that's my only sister, and I wanted to attend what might be a once-in-a-lifetime event for her. My sister was sad to hear that there was a possibility of me and Tim not attending, and that had only made me make up my mind to confirm that I would indeed be attending, but I cannot say the same for Tim. Tim had chucked at my statement, and we stopped talking about it. As the wedding was approaching, I only thought of how I should have been present with Emma, helping her around with the wedding planning and preparations. I was the only family that she had left. My husband brought up the wedding again and told me to miss it and stay with my kids instead, and I was not going to take this no this time and decided to come up with a plan. I suggested that since no babysitters were allowed, then I could get my friend Nellie to stay with the kids. Tim, however, refused my suggestion, and I ignored Tim's words and spoke to Nellie, asking her if she could look after my kids for a night or two while I attended my sister's wedding. Nellie had been more than happy to do so. In fact, she persuaded me to attend it at any cost as she knew how much I loved my sister. And so, Nellie agreed to watch the kids, and I booked a ticket to travel to my sister's town just in time. When Tim found out, he went on about how he had work and the most logical situation is that I stay home with the children and let him make his living. Have I not been going that all these years? I told him that I already took care of the kids and they will stay with my friend Nellie. I grew impatient. The day of my flight arrived and the plan was set into motion, and I woke up my kids, got them dressed, and packed small bags with all their essentials in them. I packed my suitcase along with it and made breakfast for the children. Tim already left for work, so I dropped my kids off at Nellie's and then headed to the airport, having 2 hours left for my flight. Just as I was about to board, I found out that Tim had canceled my plane ticket. I sat at the airport for a while feeling upset, but those feelings quickly disappeared as I came up with a new plan. I went home, got into my car, and drove 4 hours to get to the town. I made it just in time and was happy to see my sister. At 5 p.m., my husband called and was absolutely freaking out, asking where was I, and I told him I made it to my sister's town, and he blew up, saying I was not supposed to go. He even said that he canceled my ticket to get me to stay and demanded I returned ASAP, but I said not until the wedding was over. He called me a horrible, neglectful mother, then had his mom scold me and accuse me of abandoning my own kids. Tim's words, well, they stung me, and I felt guilty about attending the wedding altogether, and I loved seeing my sister have a great time at her wedding, but I did not enjoy it due to my guilt. Was I wrong for still going? Am I the a-hole for still going to my sister's wedding after my husband canceled my plane ticket? What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here, so we have a family drama. I do have 2 updates for you guys, and it's about to get good. If you guys are new to the channel, take a second, hit that subscribe button, and let's jump into update number 1. I found out my husband lied about the robbery that happened months ago and had accused a babysitter of stealing just so I can't hire any others. I also found out about Tim's infidelity. That's right. His phone pinged one day while Tim was busy taking a shower, and my curiosity piqued. And I checked to see what the message was, and to my surprise, it was from Zoe. She had sent him a text that said he should transfer the money to her by evening or she would come clean to me about him cheating on me with her. When Tim came out of the shower, I inquired him about the text, and Tim only looked angry as I was apparently snooping. As Tim refused to indulge further, I contacted Zoe and met up with her myself. If I could not get the story out from him, I would get it out from her. I threatened to get Zoe arrested for robbery if she did not come clean, and she did, sung like a canary. She told me how it's been going on for weeks behind my back, and he had come up with a brilliant plan just to hide his infidelity. He was the one who discovered the, quote, robbery. I never saw or talked to her after he kicked her out. But now that I found out about it, Tim told me to just forget about it and move on as it's been months and he had not touched another woman but me. I could hardly believe him. The nerve of him, and I felt disgusted. He told me to move on, focus on the kids, and it would be good for the both of us that I did, as I had nowhere to go and depended on him for money. I did the most rational thing I could think of, and I left my husband in the middle of the night. I took my kids with me to my sister's, and I told her all about what had happened and cried in her arms. My sister told me I should file for full custody of my kids as soon as I could and divorced him. Our relationship was broken the day that he had broken my trust, and I had no financial means of supporting myself and my sister. Emma and her new husband stepped in saying I could stay with them for as long as I liked without a worry in the world. As I and my kids were family and they could never say no to me. Emma and her husband even offered to chip in and get me a lawyer to fight my case in getting custody of my kids. I heard rumors and words from my relatives now that I was back in my hometown that my husband Tim had been spreading false lies about me. He'd been telling everyone how I had cheated on him and had not allowed him to meet any of his friends and family, and how I had also gone too far by leaving him alone to manage the kids and his job by himself while I went out and attended parties. He had a twisted story in his favor, and he made me turn out to be the bad guy, and he would get away with it all. Update number 2. My sister Emma hired a lawyer. Jessup. He was a renowned family lawyer who narrowly lost a case. Emma vouched for Jessup and told me that he was the best I could get to help my case against my husband Tim. Jessup asked me to collect any evidence that I had that it would help out my case against Tim. He told me how Tim too had lawyered up and that his lawyer was tough. A mean one and would not be easygoing on me, and I had to stay strong and fight it through if I wished to keep my kids with me. The case, most specifically, the hearing seemed to go on for ages. I sat there anxiously listening to both the lawyers argue against each other, and I looked over to the other side to see Tim grin at me. I was enraged and sat up straight. It was Tim's words against mine, and Tim had the financial means to get a better lawyer than Jessup. But Jessup was not going to give up. Jessup presented evidence to the court as to how I was made to quit my job and had my accounts changed to be owned in the name of my husband and had no financial means to support myself, even though I had never wanted to leave my job. He also told the judge how I was isolated and was not allowed to meet my friends or family and could only do so if Tim had agreed to meet him. He told the judge how my plane tickets to my sisters had been canceled by Tim without so much as a warning to me, and I was left to drive alone to my sister's town. He also mentioned how Tim had lied about the robbery that Zoe had committed and was instead having an affair with her behind my back. Well, to conclude, he added that Tim did not want to take care of his own kids and tried to pawn them off on him and onto me. He told everyone how Tim had a narcissistic, controlling personality and wanted to control me and my life by taking over my finances. Ivy's Tim's lawyer spoke twisted lies about me and Tim that he had fed. She told the judge how I cared more about going to parties or hanging out with my friends rather than taking care of my own kids. She told me how Tim would work for hours in the end and just had no expectations. That I'd take care of the kids. I did not have to do any work and was even getting a monthly allowance to spend on myself. She told me how Tim has suspected me of having an affair with a friend and has thus fired the babysitter so I could stay home more often. Ivy mentioned how I had abandoned my kids and Tim and left to drive hours just to attend a party. And also how I had taken my kids in the middle of the night rather than wait till morning. My sister Emma and my friend Nellie both testified on my behalf. My kids were too small to be brought to court, and so a difficult decision had to be made. I was reminded of Zoe. I contacted her and forced her to give a statement in my favor. If she would not, I would be contacting the police instead. Zoe, being the meek woman she was, obliged. She corroborated my testimony as the correct one and Tim as a made-up story, and I won. I got the custody of my kids. However, Tim still had visiting rights, but his visits could be supervised. Had it not been for Zoe, I would have lost custody of my kids, as Tim had the financial means to support them while I simply did not. I, however, was not done with Tim just yet. I decided to take half the money that was in our joint account as I still had access to it. Tim would come home to a nasty surprise, and I also sent an email to his boss informing him about Tim and his infidelity and everything that he had done. I applied to several job interviews and filed for divorce as soon as I could, and I did not want Tim in my life anymore. I shifted back to close to my sister and told Nellie I would pay her a visit whenever I could. I was finally glad to have my life and freedom back and would have to start anew. It would not matter, as I have my kids with me.
Could you imagine if people weren't there to testify for OP? OP actually got so lucky because, like she said, she did not have the money, and if it was not for all the deceitfulness of OP's ex-husband, the judge probably would have gave him full custody. However, that's not how the story worked out, thank goodness. And OP's husband got a little taste of karma at the end of it, because OP decides to tell his boss and take half of the joint money. So I wish OP the best of luck, and I'm glad that she got out of this toxic relationship. Let me know what you guys thought about this story. Drop it in the comment section down below. Zoe was not really a good person either. I mean, she went behind OP's back. OP was someone who gave her a chance, an opportunity to babysit, and this is how she repaid her. No, she was not a thief. She did not actually steal a diamond necklace, but she is a cheater, or so, an affair homewrecker. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Drop it down below. Let's discuss this. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.